I never thought I'd be the kind of person who checks his phone obsessively every time he pulls into a gas station. Now I do it without thinking, the same way I used to check the weather before a long drive. Old habits get replaced by new ones when someone teaches you that absence has a price. My name is Ray Callahan. I'm 47 years old, and I'm a pharmaceutical sales representative covering the Southwest Territory out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been doing this job for 19 years. I know the stretch of I-10 between Phoenix and El Paso the way other men know their own backyards. I'm on the road roughly 18 days a month, sometimes more if the quarter is tight and my regional manager is breathing down my neck about numbers. The job pays well. It cost me my marriage, but it pays well. Sandra and I finalized the divorce 2 years ago. No kids, just a golden retriever named Hatch that she took with her to her sister's place in Tucson, which honestly hurt more than losing the house we'd shared. I bought a new place about 8 months after she left. A 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a quiet part of North Scottsdale, a neighborhood called Desert Ridge. It's more house than one person needs, but I liked the extra space. The 2nd bedroom I turned into a home office. The 3rd I left mostly empty. Didn't even put a bed frame in there for the first year, just some boxes I hadn't unpacked yet. The deal I made with myself when I bought the place was simple. I was going to be smart about it. I hired a home watch company called Sun State Property Care to check on the house twice a week while I was traveling. A guy named Frank Ruiz, who ran the company out of a small office in Tempe, had a spare key and a standing agreement. He'd swing by Tuesday and Friday mornings, make sure everything looked okay, check for leaks, reset the thermostat if needed, bring in any packages left on the porch. $280 a month, I paid it without hesitation. I wasn't going to be the cautionary tale about the guy who came home to a flooded kitchen or a broken water heater that had been running for 2 weeks. For almost a year and a half, everything was fine. Or at least I thought it was. The first sign came from my neighbor Gary. Gary Whitfield is retired, lives 2 doors down, and has the energy of a man who takes his neighborhood watch responsibilities extremely seriously. He's the kind of guy who knows which cars belong on the street and which ones don't. I liked that about him when I bought the house. I told him explicitly that I traveled often and asked him to text me if anything seemed off. He'd done it once before, about a year earlier, when he noticed a sprinkler head had blown and water was flooding the side yard. I'd called Frank, and it got handled the same day. The system worked. So, when Gary texted me on a Tuesday morning in March while I was sitting in a Denny's outside of Albuquerque, reviewing call notes before an 8 a.m. appointment, I figured it was something routine. I picked up my phone expecting a photo of a package left in the rain or a car that had parked halfway into my driveway. What I got was a photo of 4 cars I didn't recognize parked in front of my house and in my driveway. A white cargo van, a silver Honda Pilot, a black Jeep Wrangler, and a pearl-colored Escalade. The text underneath read, "Is everything okay? Looks like a party over there. Thought you were out of town." I stared at that photo for about 30 seconds. I was supposed to be gone until Thursday. I replied, "I am out of town." "Are you sure that's my address?" He sent a second photo, same cars. He'd walked to the end of his driveway to get a better angle. You could clearly see my mailbox with the address on it, 1714 Corinthia Drive. My first call was to Frank. It went to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me immediately. My second call was to my regional manager telling him I needed to reschedule my morning appointments. My third call, which I placed while already walking back to my rental car, was to the Scottsdale Police non-emergency line. The officer I spoke with was patient and professional. I explained the situation. He asked whether I had reason to believe a crime was being committed. I said I didn't know. I said there were vehicles at my home that I didn't recognize and that I was out of state. He explained that officers could do a wellness check and make contact, but without evidence of forced entry or an active emergency, there wasn't a lot they could do if whoever was there claimed they had permission to be on the property. That word stopped me. Permission. What do you mean if they claim to have permission? I asked. He explained it carefully, the way people do when they've had to explain something many times before. If someone presents themselves as a house sitter, a contractor, a family member, if there's no obvious sign of a break-in and they have a key, the officers would document the welfare check, but couldn't necessarily remove anyone on the spot. It becomes a civil matter. He recommended I contact an attorney and return home as soon as possible if I believed my property was being used without my authorization. I thanked him and hung up. I want to pause here because I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just have the police go in and clear everyone out? I asked myself the same question for the 2-hour drive from Albuquerque to the airport. The honest answer is this. I was a sales rep who had hired a legitimate home watch company with a signed contract and a spare key. I had no idea who was in my house or what story they might tell responding officers. If Frank had subcontracted work to someone, or if there was a legitimate explanation I wasn't seeing, I didn't want to cause a scene that could embarrass me professionally. I know how that sounds. In hindsight, I know exactly how that sounds. But in the moment, sitting in an airport rental car return lane, I made the decision to go home and see for myself before escalating. I booked the next available flight. I was back in Phoenix by 3 p.m. I didn't drive straight home. I called Gary from the rental car pickup and asked him to text me if the vehicles were still there. He responded within 3 minutes. All gone. Left about noon. Left a bag of trash on the curb that's not yours, though. I had Gary take a photo of the trash. A black contractor bag, tied at the top, sitting on my curb. Nothing remarkable about it on its own. I went home. I used my own key and walked in through the front door. The house looked normal at first glance. Clean. Nothing obviously disturbed. But then I stood still in the foyer for a moment and let my eyes adjust to what I was actually seeing rather than what I expected to see. The living room furniture had been moved, not rearranged, permanently pushed back. The coffee table was against the far wall. Both of my armchairs were angled differently. There were faint scuff marks on the hardwood near the center of the room, the kind you get from heavy equipment on wheels. My area rug, a Moroccan-style piece Sandra had picked out that I'd kept because it was expensive, had a flattening in the pile like something heavy had sat on it for several hours. I walked into the kitchen. The counter was clean, but there was a faint smell of something artificial, not cleaning product, more like a synthetic fabric or spray paint. Not strong, just a presence, the kind of smell that doesn't belong in your home. In the hallway bathroom, there were water droplets on the vanity mirror and a few smudges on the glass. Someone had used it recently. There were no towels out of place, but the hand soap had been used and pushed back at a slightly different angle than I keep it. The second bedroom, my home office, was where I found the first real evidence. My desk had been pushed aside. The desk chair was against the closet, and on the windowsill, which I never put anything on, there were 2 small pieces of gaffer tape that had been peeled off and left in a little curl, the way people do when they tape down cables or equipment. Gaffer tape. The kind used on film sets and photo shoots. I sat down on the edge of my desk and looked at those 2 little curls of tape. Someone had been using my house as a set. I didn't sleep well that night. I went through every room in the house twice more. The third bedroom, the one with the unpacked boxes, showed evidence of having been entered and tidied in a way that felt deliberate. 2 of my boxes had been moved to make room along one wall. There was a single scuff on the baseboard that was fresh, pale against the paint. The next morning I did what I should have done before getting on a plane. I started documenting. I photographed every mark, every displaced object, every detail. I photographed the gaffer tape on the windowsill before touching it. I photographed the scuff marks. I set up my phone to record while I walked through and narrated what I was seeing. Then I started searching. I typed in my address on every platform I could think of. Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Then on a hunch, I searched on a platform called Peerspace. If you're not familiar with it, Peerspace is like Airbnb, but specifically for commercial spaces, photo studios, event venues, meeting rooms. You can rent someone's loft for a brand shoot or someone's rooftop for a corporate event. My house was listed on Peerspace. The listing was titled, Spacious Desert Modern Home Natural Light, Neutral Palette, available for photo, video, events. The photos were of my living room, my kitchen, my backyard with the pool. The description called it a professionally styled space perfect for product photography, real estate media, music video content, and small gatherings. The nightly rate was $350 for up to 5 hours. The full day rate was $800. There were 14 bookings showing as completed, and a rating of 4.9 stars. I counted the bookings, 14 sessions at an average of around $600 each, based on the pricing tier. That was roughly $8,400 in revenue, generated from my house, my pool, my hardwood floors, while I was driving to Albuquerque and Tucson and Las Vegas making my calls. I found the account that had created the listing. The display name was Southwest Creative Spaces. The profile photo was a generic landscape shot of the Sonoran Desert at sunset. No personal photos, no identifying information. I screenshotted everything before the listing could disappear. Then I sat with that folder of screenshots for about an hour, and I made myself think clearly. The listing had been up for at least 3 months based on the booking history. Someone had access to my house, a key. Someone who knew my schedule well enough to book the property on the days I was traveling. Someone who could enter and exit without triggering any concern from my neighbor Gary for months until a Tuesday morning when apparently the volume of cars was higher than usual. The only person who had a key in my travel schedule was Frank Ruiz at Sunstate Property Care. I pulled up our original service agreement. Under terms of service, Frank's company was authorized to access the property for routine inspections only. There was a clause explicitly stating that the key was not to be transferred to third parties without written consent. It wasn't ambiguous. I went to Frank's company website, standard local business page. A photo of Frank in a polo shirt, friendly smile, shaking hands with someone in front of a house. Customer testimonials, a section about the services offered. I scrolled down. Under a tab called Partners, there was a list of affiliated businesses. Cleaning services, pest control, a locksmith, and one that wasn't a home maintenance company at all. Mesa Creative Group Production and Event Coordination. I clicked on it. Mesa Creative Group had a website that described itself as a boutique production company specializing in commercial and content media in the greater Phoenix area. Under a section called Our Network, they advertised access to curated private properties and residential locations available for shoots and events. That's when I understood exactly how it worked. Frank identified properties, homes whose owners were away frequently, whose schedules he knew because they'd told him, because that's how home watch services operate. You tell your caretaker when you're leaving and when you're coming back. He held the keys. Mesa Creative Group was the client-facing operation, handling bookings, collecting payments, coordinating the actual shoots. Frank provided access and made sure the property was ready. Whoever ran Mesa Creative took the booking fees, paid Frank his cut, and everyone went home clean. I spent the rest of that day researching. Mesa Creative Group was owned by a man named Tyler Voss, 34 years old, with an extensive LinkedIn profile listing clients in commercial photography, influencer content, and regional advertising. He was based out of Tempe. He had a business partner listed on the company's registered agent documents that I found through the Arizona Corporation Commission, a woman named Dana Echeverria, who appeared to be the logistical side of the operation, the one who handled the peer-space listings, managed the bookings calendar, coordinated with property contacts. Frank Ruiz was not listed anywhere publicly. He was the invisible piece. I sat on this for 2 more days. I want to explain that decision too, because people always ask why I didn't call the police the moment I found the listing. The answer is the same one the officer had given me on the phone. Without more documentation, without evidence of what was happening inside my home, all I had was a suspicious listing and a property manager with a key. Tyler Voss could have claimed he had a verbal agreement with me. Dana could say she believed the arrangements were legitimate. Frank could say he thought he had authorization to facilitate third-party access under some gray area interpretation of our service agreement. I'd watched enough true crime to know that evidence wins cases. I needed more than screenshots. I ordered 3 security cameras online with next-day delivery. I set them up on the 3rd morning, one in the living room, positioned inside a large succulent planter on a shelf, with a clear view of the main space and front door. One in the kitchen mounted above the refrigerator, one in the hallway. I also set up a motion alert dashboard on my phone and drove to a hotel in Tempe. I didn't have to wait long. On the 2nd day, at 11:14 inches the morning, the doorbell app notified me that someone had approached the front door. I opened my phone and watched a man in dark jeans and a gray hoodie let himself in with a key. He moved through the house with familiarity. He opened the closet in the 2nd bedroom, pulled out a folding table I used for storage, and set it up against the window. He moved my living room furniture in the same configuration I'd noticed before, coffee table pushed back, chairs angled. He went to the kitchen, checked the cabinets, appeared to take inventory. Then he sat down at my kitchen table and started texting. That was Frank Ruiz. I recognized him from his website photo. 40 minutes later, a silver SUV parked outside. 2 people got out, a man and a woman, carrying bags of equipment, lights, backdrops, camera cases. They were inside my house for 4 hours. I watched every minute through the camera feeds. They shot what looked like a product campaign, a woman posing with skincare products on my kitchen counter, in my living room, by the pool. Frank stayed for the first hour, then left. The other two cleaned up carefully before they left, restoring most things to their original positions. They weren't careless. This was a practiced operation. I recorded and screenshotted everything. On the 5th day of surveillance, I got the evidence that sealed it. Frank returned with a woman I recognized from my research as Dana Echevarria. They sat at my dining room table, and went over what appeared to be a booking schedule on her laptop. The camera microphone was good enough to catch fragments of the conversation. The Scottsdale property is booked solid through April. 5 sessions confirmed, 2 more pending. Voss wants to add a second bathroom shoot for the influencer package. Make sure we're cleared before the 22nd. The owner comes back on the 23rd. I had the date. I had their faces. I had the recordings. That evening I walked into the Scottsdale Police Department with my phone, a printed packet of screenshots, the PeerSpace listing, the Arizona Corporation Commission registration for Mesa Creative Group, and a USB drive with 4 days of security camera footage. The detective who took my report was a man named Marcus Del Rey, mid-40s, the kind of steady presence that makes you feel like a case is going to be handled correctly. He reviewed the footage right there at his desk and didn't say much while watching. When it finished, he asked me 3 questions. Did Frank Ruiz have written authorization to allow third-party access to my property? No. Had I at any time given verbal or written permission for commercial shoots at my home? No. Was I currently paying Sun State Property Care for a service that explicitly prohibited unauthorized key transfer? Yes. He nodded and said, "This is commercial burglary, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty at minimum. Potentially more once we look at the financials." Over the following 2 weeks, Detective Del Rey and his team built the case. They subpoenaed the PeerSpace records. They identified every booking tied to my address. 14 sessions over the span of approximately 15 weeks, generating just over $9,200 in total. My house was one of 6 properties in Frank's portfolio that were being cycled through the same scheme, 6 homes. The total revenue across all properties exceeded $51,000. Frank's cut was 30%. Mesa Creative Group kept the rest. The arrests happened on a Thursday morning in early April. Police executed simultaneous search warrants at Frank's office, Tyler Voss's apartment, and Dana Echevarria's condo. I wasn't present for the arrests, but Detective Del Rey called me afterward. He said Frank had appeared genuinely shocked, not the way innocent people look surprised, but the way people look when they realize the thing they thought was untraceable had been traced. Tyler Voss was charged with receiving stolen property, commercial fraud, and conspiracy. Dana Echevarria faced the same conspiracy charge, plus additional counts related to operating the PeerSpace account under false representation. Frank Ruiz was charged with breach of fiduciary duty, unauthorized use of access for commercial gain, and conspiracy. All 3 entered plea agreements before trial. Frank received 18 months probation, a $10,000 fine, and a permanent bar from operating any property management or home watch service in Arizona. Tyler got 2 years probation and restitution. Dana received probation and community service. Restitution was ordered across all 6 homeowners. My share came to just under $4,000, calculated based on the sessions at my property minus what they argued were operational costs. I thought that number was insulting, and said so to the prosecutor. She agreed with me, but explained the math of plea agreements. I took the check, and I took the small satisfaction of knowing that Tyler Voss's production company had already shuttered, and that Frank Ruiz would never hold a key to a stranger's home again in any professional capacity. The more complicated cost is the one that doesn't show up in restitution paperwork. I had let myself believe that the system I'd put in place, the service agreement, the professional company, the twice-weekly check-ins, actually meant my home was protected while I was away. That's a specific kind of trust, not the emotional, complicated trust you invest in people you love. This was transactional trust, the kind you pay for and sign your name to. And someone had looked at that trust and seen nothing but an opportunity. Sun State Property Care dissolved 3 months after the arrests. Frank's 2 other employees, neither of whom were involved, lost their jobs. I felt genuinely bad for them. They'd done nothing wrong. I sold the house 11 months later, not immediately. I gave it time. thinking I could move past it. I repainted 2 of the rooms. I bought a new area rug. I had the locks rekeyed 3 times for reasons that were more psychological than practical. But every time I came home from a trip and walked in through the front door, I'd find myself scanning the floor for scuff marks, checking the windowsill for gaffer tape, opening the second bedroom to see if the boxes were where I'd left them. That's not a way to live in your own house. I moved to a condo in the Arcadia neighborhood now. Ground floor unit in a gated building with a staffed concierge desk from 6 in the morning until midnight. Electronic key fobs, not physical keys, that I control from my phone. I installed my own camera system anyway, because I do that now. It's become habit the same way checking the phone at gas stations has. You don't unlearn certain things. I've thought a lot about what I would tell someone in my situation, someone who travels for work, who owns a house, who hires people to be their eyes and hands while they're gone. Here is what I know now that I didn't know then. First, do not assume that a signed service agreement protects you. A piece of paper creates legal recourse after the fact. It does not prevent anything. Verify that the people who have access to your home are actually doing what they've been hired to do and nothing more. Call them randomly during trips. Ask for dated photos from check-ins. Make the arrangement feel active and monitored, because monitored people behave differently. Second, search your address on commercial venue platforms, not just Airbnb and Vrbo. Peerspace, Gigster, and similar platforms specifically cater to commercial shoots and events. If you travel often and own a property with any visual appeal, nice kitchen, good natural light, a pool, a clean aesthetic, it can be attractive to exactly this kind of scheme. Search your address at least once a month. Third, Gary saved me, my neighbor. Not because he had any special information, but because he was paying attention, and he knew he was supposed to contact me if something seemed wrong. Cultivate that relationship deliberately. Give your neighbors your cell number. Tell them explicitly, no one should be coming to this house with equipment or multiple cars when I'm traveling. Give them a specific thing to watch for, not just a vague, let me know if anything's weird. Fourth, motion-triggered cameras that record to the cloud are not optional if you travel. I know some people feel uneasy about the surveillance aspect. I understand that. But recording within your own home, which you are legally permitted to do, gives you something no witness testimony or signed agreement can replace. It gives you video of exactly what happened in your house, in your absence. That footage was the reason my case closed quickly and cleanly. Without it, I would have had a suspicious Peerspace listing and my word against everyone else's. Fifth, never give anyone your schedule more precisely than necessary. I had gotten into the habit of giving Frank exact departure and return dates because it felt like the responsible thing to do. Keep your service provider fully informed. In practice, I was giving him a detailed map of when my house was empty and for how long. Tell your home watch company you'll be away for several days. Tell them when you're coming back on the day you're coming back. They don't need more than that to do their job. And the less detail you share, the less information is available to misuse. I still drive the same highways, still cover the same territory from Phoenix to Albuquerque to El Paso. I still pull into the same truck stops and sit in the same Denny's booths reviewing call notes before appointments. The job hasn't changed. I've changed. Sandra called me last spring when she heard about the court case through mutual friends. She was kind about it. She said she was sorry that happened to me. I told her I was fine. She paused the way she always used to pause when she thought I was being less than honest about how I was doing. She was right then and now. There's a particular feeling that comes from knowing strangers were in your space, moving your furniture, using your bathroom, treating your home like a set to be rented by the hour. It's not dramatic the way a break-in is dramatic. No broken windows, no spray-painted walls, no obvious violence. It's subtler than that, and somehow worse. Because the violation wasn't random. It was deliberate, careful, and profitable. They didn't damage anything. They treated the property well because it was an asset to them. And somewhere in that calculation, I, the actual owner, the person who'd signed the mortgage and chosen the rug and bought the succulent on that shelf, had been subtracted from the equation entirely. I was just the guy who paid the bills and stayed out of the way. That part I had to work through with a therapist. Not dramatically, not in a way I'd talk about at dinner with colleagues, but I sat with a very patient man named Doctor Kaminsky for about 6 sessions and worked through what it means when the one space that's supposed to be entirely yours turns out to be anything but. What it means to be a person whose home is, by the nature of your work, mostly empty. What that absence costs you, and what certain people will take from it if you let them. I'm not telling you this to be dramatic. I'm telling you this because when you watch crime stories or read these accounts, the part that gets summarized quickly and then he recovered is actually the longest and hardest part. The legal case resolved in 4 months. The recovery is still running. I don't tell this story to scare people out of traveling for work, or to make homeowners paranoid, or to suggest that every service provider is looking for angles to exploit. Frank Ruiz was one person who made a calculated and selfish decision. The other contractors I've hired over the years have been honest, reliable people. The new condo association's maintenance staff are friendly and professional. Most people are, but some aren't. And the ones who aren't will look for the gaps in your attention, the predictable patterns of your absence, the trust you've chosen to place in systems and agreements. They will be patient and careful, and they will count on you not noticing until the numbers grow too large to miss. Notice sooner. Set up the cameras. Know your neighbors by name. Search your own address. Your home should be the one place in the world that is unambiguously, completely yours. Fight to keep it that way.